Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today's online event. This is Jill from USC. The USC graduate program events are a series of webinars devoting to spread ideas, cutting edge knowledge, and insights from different industries and areas will be presented here by world-leading renowned professors or speakers of USC. So today's topic is portfolio and artist statement strategies, what to include and not include from USC Roski School of Art and Design. Welcome our guest speaker, Professor Eva, former Director of Graduate Study, MFA Design, Associate Professor of Practice of Design, Roski School of Art and Design. Please note that there will be time for Q&A at the end, so feel free to leave your questions down below in the chat box, and we'll try to go over as many as we can. And please note this webinar will be recorded for future use. And please mute yourself during the presentation for a good quality event. Now, without further ado, please welcome our guest speaker, Professor Eva.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to see you, except that I can't see any of you. So it's interesting. I know there's many of you present here, though. So first, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my qualifications to tell you what I'm going to tell you. So I was the chair of the undergraduate design for many, many years. And for the last 3 years, I've been the director of the graduate program, which is a new program at USC. This semester, I've stepped down, but I'm now teaching still in the grad program and a little bit in the undergrad. So for the last, I would say 10 years, I look at portfolios every semester. I've looked at the graduate portfolios primarily in the last 3 years, but I've also looked at undergraduate portfolios for admission into USC. And because I've been looking at portfolios for so long and reading artist statements, and I've seen the evolution of how young designers, young artists present themselves. And I've noticed some trends in the last year in particular, and I wanted to talk about that because I know a lot of people get help in constructing portfolios from their professors and from their friends and family. And I think there's a lot of input on before the portfolio is ever sent or uploaded into our slide room presentation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about how that helps you and how that hurts you a little bit. So this is this talk is about things you can do to maybe make your work look better, and then things maybe also you shouldn't maybe do because they're not showing your work in the best light, I would say. So I'm going to start with first the whole idea of applying to a grad program. So when you apply to a grad program, one of the things that you need to ask yourself really is, what is it you want from that program, and how will that carry through into your portfolio presentation? So by what do you want? I mean, I know everybody wants to go to grad school because you want a higher education. I know you want to study more for whatever reason. But I think a lot of people don't really think about what a grad program is. So a grad program means that you're getting 2 years, 2.5 years to really think about what your work is about. What does it mean? Why you do that work? And through that process of really thinking deeply and really looking in the mirror and thinking about why you're applying to a grad program, I think what you're doing is you're examining also your work And the problem for designers is that a lot of work that you do is not personally driven. It's driven by an assignment you might have had at school, or a job, or an internship, or something else that you're already doing. And so often you're reflecting what your faculty has said to you is a good outcome for a project, or something that you've been told is good within a certain context, but may not be as good in a bigger context, like when you apply to grad school against students from many universities, many different kinds of programs. So what you're trying to do when you come to a grad program is, first of all, is establish an identity, establish a purpose, establish a look or an interest. And you're doing that in two ways. One is portfolio, and one is through your artist statement, and also through your recommendation letters a little bit. So it's important, first of all, that all of those elements are you approach them holistically, that they all work together to paint a picture of who you are to a stranger like me when I look at a portfolio, right? So all of these things have to sort of hit the same notes in your presentation. So for example, if your strength, I just give an example, if your strength is, I don't know, illustration, let's say, your strength is illustration, then your design statement really should talk about why illustration is of importance to you, and maybe feature some of the projects that you've done as an illustrator also, right? And when I look at your portfolio, the thing that I should be able to close my eyes after I look at your portfolio and picture your illustrations, not a lot of other work necessarily. So there should be an emphasis on what you consider to be your planned study going forward. And that's really important, because when you go into grad school, you're devoting 2 years to coming up with a big idea, an umbrella idea that all of your projects fit under, right? So there's a connection that you're forming between the kind of work you make, or the way that you make work, your process, right? All of these things. And if your portfolio at the very beginning, when you enter, is kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge, which has, you know, a little bit of everything, it's really difficult to tell. It looks like you have many skills, but you don't know what you want. So the trick is really to think about, what do you want to go to grad school with? It may change once you're in grad school, right? But to get into grad school, you really have to figure out what you care about. And when I say care about, it could be an interest. So for example, your work is about helping people, or, you know, some kind of nonprofit interests where you want to help children, or you want to help older people, or you want to help animals, or you want to help the planet. You're concerned about climate. You're concerned about sustainability. Maybe nature inspires you to make the work you do. Maybe it's really about what it is. Maybe it's about publications. Maybe you are interested in identity, or gender, or politics, or family structures, or culture. I mean, there's 1,000 things that you could present yourself, and none of us are only one thing, right? But I should be able to look at any portfolio and walk away with, this person cares about this, or this designer wants to make work that does this. So really, that's the very first thing to identify it, you know, and look at yourself. And if the best way to do that, and here's a suggestion on how to do that, is to take your work, physically take your work, take it out of the computer, and put it on a table, put it on the floor, and sit there with it for a while. Sit with your projects and really think about what is the relationship between these things, between the images or the process, how you make work, or how one project led you to another project, so that you could talk about, I made a project about little kids, and it made me think that little kids really need a specific kind of supervision. So I made an app for their parents that lets the little kids be stronger or smarter or whatever that is. And this app really inspired me. And so I started to think, what are other ways I could involve children or their parents? And so I made an immersive exhibition at my school or at my home or in my bedroom, and invited my friends over or the parents over. So it's important to create a story with the work that you already have. You're creating a narrative about how you go from one work to the next. So everybody's narrative, because you're all individuals, right? You're all artists, you're all designers, you all have you're unique. And that uniqueness is what's going to grad school. If you're same, you don't need to go to grad school. You just go out and get a job, and you have a boss that, like a teacher, tells you what to do. But if you're going to grad school, you're trying to develop the self, and you're trying to develop your narrative. And when you develop that narrative, you become stronger. You become stronger at presentation. You become stronger about who you are, what you want, and also in the end, you are also more attractive to any employer, which I know everybody wants a job at the end of this. So you're also more attractive because you've thought all of this through, and people would like people that have ideas and have a stance that aren't blank slates. If you're blank slates, you're somebody else's hands. If you know who you are hired for your ideas. And when you're hired for your ideas, these are higher positions at any kind of industry that you go into or education. And you're more valuable. You contribute more. It doesn't matter what you are working on. You are able to conceptualize and talk about, you have a point of view, right? So that's the goal of, I know that sounds like a lot, but that really is the grad process. That really is, the portfolio is a physical reflection of that narrative. So, okay, what goes in a portfolio? So a portfolio usually has about, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 15 items in it, projects, right? You don't want too many projects, because picture this: if you go to an art museum, right, and you walk around and then you go outside, how many pieces of art do you really remember? If you go to a gallery, how many things really stay with you? Maybe 3 if you're really smart, maybe 2 things. You enjoy the experience, but you don't absorb. Nobody absorbs that much imagery. Imagery is very complex. So you want to present yourself in a simple way. So you don't need many projects, and you don't need to show somebody that you can do everything. So a slide room presentation, much like a physical portfolio, is a story you're creating about yourself. So project number one really has to say who you are as a designer. So it's the work you want to do, and it's the strongest piece you have. You always start with the strongest piece because it sets the tone, right? So that piece is usually not a multiple image piece, meaning that it doesn't have 30 images attached to it. It's really something you can do in 1, 2, or 3 slides, right? And it shows I am a UX designer, or I am an illustrator, or I am a motion designer, or I like graphics, or I want thinking about VR. You're all different. So don't pick the project that's the most complex, pick the one that's the strongest as your first one. Okay, your second project in a portfolio should be also your strongest one. So what that says to a viewer is, oh, this person's an illustrator. And then when they look at your second project, they go, that's right, I was right. They're an illustrator. Here's another project that has to do with illustration. So what you're doing is you're confirming sort of the path you set with your first project, right? So it's really important to do that. After that, you want to show a project that has a lot of development. So maybe it's a process piece, or it's a campaign of some sort. So it's something that requires multiple pages and shows how you thought about something, and then how it became a reality. So you can walk someone through how you think. And this project is a longer project than the first two projects, because now you have somebody's interest, you've pulled them in, and now you can tell them a little bit more about how you work, what you care about. So it's a slightly more complex kind of project. Okay, then when you go to your next project, it should be of your choice, maybe show something different that you also are good at, and same with the project after that. And then you need something that's kind of an aha moment. So again, you need a very strong, maybe unexpected, maybe something a little different moment. So because now when I'm looking at things, I've gotten a little used to you. I think I know who you are, and now you've surprised me a little bit. So you've taken me a little off guard, and you showed me something that is pretty good, pretty great, but was maybe not like the other pieces. Maybe it's a little expected. So you go on like that. And then at the end, your last project is also your strongest project. So all your work has to be good, but that last project is important because many people look at portfolios from the end forward, both physically and online. That is not uncommon at all, that people go forwards and backwards, or they scroll down to your letter first and then they come back and scroll upwards. So that last project again has to reaffirm the same thing as your first project, the same kind of, it's a frame around your work, right? So it contains everything in it, and it contains a story. You can think about it like, the way I think about it is, for example, in music, right? When you listen to a piece of music, usually there's the first part of the music is a exposition, or it's an introduction. It introduces you to the characters and the way things sound, right? And then as you go through it, there's a second movement is usually like a development. So it's more about the things you've just learned about, right? And in the end, there's some sort of recapitulation or way that it all ties back together and reminds you what story you're in. So constructing this narrative is very similar to that. It's also very similar to if you watch a movie, right? In the beginning of the movie, you meet some characters, and then they go somewhere, they do some things, and in the end, you see the same characters come together, and the whole story is brought back and has some sort of ending, right? So you in your portfolio, you're creating an arc, a drama within a frame. So I hope that sort of makes sense a little bit. Other things that I really want to talk about in the portfolio are one of the things that I noticed this year in particular, and I think it has to do with a lot of people working with apps, UX, user experience of various kind, but many of you are using templates for your work. And unfortunately, many of you are accessing the same templates online and putting your work in those templates. And what that does is when I go from person to person and look at work, it makes everybody look the same or like they're all working on the same projects. So I know sometimes this is unavoidable. It just becomes an easy way to present your work. But my advice would be, whenever possible, don't take the easy way. Create your own templates, create your own layouts wherever you can and as often as you can, because it separates you from others working in a similar way. And especially you see this with people working with apps a lot. I know it has to be on templates, but again, a UX UI application also has to tell a story. And if you put everything in multiple screens, all screens, what you see is the frame of the phone screen, and you see it repeated over and over in different colors, but you don't, as a viewer, you're not dealing with the inside information. And you really want somebody to think about why you created the app that you did. It's not about you filling many boxes. It's about really thinking about how those boxes connect to each other and which ones are the important ones. You don't always have to show every box. You might want to just introduce your app, what it's about, and show some of the key screens. I think it's a lot easier to understand because nobody on their computers can read all of that type anyway. And so it just becomes pattern on everybody's screen because nobody goes that deep into it. Okay, another thing that you should have in your portfolio at this point, unless you really, really never want to do it, is motion. I think motion is really important to designers. So whether you're an illustrator or doing websites or apps or want to go into VR or AI or any of these directions, I think it's really important to acknowledge that motion is very much how we communicate often, and almost every industry requires designers to be able to ultimately do something, whether it's just the front of a website or social media, which many people are on, or every business uses. So I think showing a motion piece, which could be simple or it could be complex, is a good idea. If that's your primary way that you work, then it's the same thing. It's what is your strongest piece, put that first as a motion, and the next one, then the next one, the next one. Another thing that I suggest that you all utilize is there's in Slide Room, there is a preference to describe the work that you are showcasing. So it lets you talk a little bit about why you made the assignment or the whatever it is you made, or how it was made, or why it is important. So this is a chance to use your voice to give somebody else an extra clue about what they're looking at, right? So don't assume that somebody understands what you're showing or why. And it doesn't have to be a long description. It just needs to be a 1 or 2 sentence caption. You're not writing, long statements there. But I think I noticed that very few people use this. And I think it's actually a wonderful opportunity to explain why you made something or why you think it's important. So I think that's a really important thing. Another thing I would suggest in your work is make it look finished. When something looks finished, it looks like it already exists. It looks believable. So take the time, again, show less, but do better. on what you show. Complete your thoughts, complete your work. It's not quantity, it's quality that we are looking for. Quality of idea, not only process, right? So concept is really important. Okay, I think that's more or less everything, except for please do not put one PDF with hundreds of images on it to get more images into SlideRoom, because what you're doing is reducing the size of the content, and it's all little postage stamps. And I don't think anybody wants to look at postage stamps and try and figure out what they mean or why they connect to each other. So less imagery, but stronger imagery for all of you. Okay, so I said that portfolio should be a holistic application with your artist statement, and they should work together. So here are things not to do on your artist statement. Number one, do not quote the catalog back to me, because I already know what our catalog, what the profile of the program is, what I know what we do within Roski. I know what our goals in the program are. So you don't need to show me that you read the catalog. I'm assuming everybody here will read the catalog and then write their artist statement, because in some way they agree with something that is in the profile of the school, and that's why you're applying. So in your own words, I would talk about why grad school is important to you, why a grad program would expand your work. I would not put that in terms of industry. In other words, Roski is not a placement agency. It is not a factory. It is higher education. And what that means is that your goal should be coming to an art school, a design school, a program to get smarter, right? You're coming to get smarter, to learn more about your topics of interest, because we're a university. We're not just an art school. It's not a narrow experience. It's actually an experience where you have a whole university that you can take advantage of and use your interests, other interests besides design, to support your design work, so that you can be, take some psychology classes so you learn about what kids really want, right? You can take some music classes so you can think about how rhythm and design have something in common, or you can go to the theater school, or you can go to the cinema school and learn the skills of VR, but you might want to use them in an experiential way instead of to make a film or something like that. So the beauty of a university is that you have all of this at your fingertips, and you really need to think about why you chose a university and not an art school, and how you might want to learn from that environment or participate in that environment. That being said, again, in your letter, design is your emphasis, not all this other stuff that you will get, but you might see if you can form a relationship between some other topic and your topic. You might talk about the things that you have already studied, or the things that fascinate you, or maybe something personal, like, I don't know, I've always been interested in astrology or tarot cards, and it comes into my work because I find that I draw the moon in every piece that I make, or something like that. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Or I make magazines. I like to make magazines because I look at advertisements all the time, and I save pieces of paper, and I make collages, and I stick them down, and that seems to drive me. So when we read these statements, we'd like to hear something about you and why you make the work, or how you make the work, or where you think that work will go, right? It separates you from somebody else. And please don't be broad, be specific. Be specific. Again, when you are accepted into a grad program, you can change your mind completely about how you do your work, but you have to be very honest about joining that program, right? So we expect you to grow, we expect you to change once you're here. You're not signing in blood that you will do this and only this, but you're trying to show your enthusiasm, your interest, and your goals, right? So be specific. Here's things we don't want to hear about. We don't want to hear about that you've been doing art since you were 1 year old or 2 years old, and art is all you've ever cared about, because I bet everybody on this Zoom can would start that way. I've always wanted to be a designer, or I've always wanted to be an artist. That's true for everybody, because that's why you're here. So start with the present. Start with what what you're thinking about, what you're making, why you're making it. And that's what that artist statement is really for. Okay, so be as specific as you can be. Don't quote the catalog. You can talk about, where you think your study might go, what the future might look like. If you don't know, don't say so. Don't make it up. It's not a requirement. Everybody at this stage of life is changing. You're evolving, you're making decisions. So that's kind of understood. So say specific things if you feel them. If you don't feel them, don't say them. You're better off saying less again. Okay. When you get your letters of recommendation, my suggestion is the people that put in a good word for you, you might talk to them about why you've chosen USC and why, what you're thinking about as a designer. Like if these are your teachers, I know when I write a letter of recommendation, I like to know who I'm writing it to specifically. And I like to know what that program is about. So your professors will not do that research for you. You need to tell them when you ask for your letter, I'm applying to this program because I want to do this and this and this and this. And then they can write to that topic or support you in a way that makes sense. For example, I've looked at letters where somebody worked for somebody in an internship, and the person writes a letter about the business, and maybe it's a furniture business, and the young designer worked in a furniture business, but what they did had nothing to do with design, but they were a good employee. And then I get a letter about this person is a really good employee. They showed up on time every day, and they were very nice and they were very polite, and I highly recommend them for a grad program. Well, that letter is not doing you good. So you might go to that person. And again, if that's the person that will write to you, be more specific about how working for them relates to where you might want to go in the future, or the kind of person that you are more specifically. Those letters also count. We read everything on this end. So and again, if you interacted with people in a specific way, let them talk about it. My suggestion is give it tell them what you would, not so much what you would like to hear, but tell them what you want and ask them to support you. I think it's really, really helpful. So I think that's more or less everything I wanted to talk about. So maybe we can open it up to some questions, or if there is any, or
I have a few. So if we go back to the portfolio part that you mentioned at the beginning, I just want to ask, like, when you mentioned the first project, it should be the strongest instead of the most complex.
Mhm.
I'd like to know more about like what you trying to suggest here, because it
Well,
seems like a little, hard to understand for me.
okay, this, when I say the strongest, I mean something that, first of all, isn't tiny, and something that might be a little bit inviting or give me a sense of who you are, and you think it's good work. So it's not so much a kind of work, but maybe it's an engaging image or a set of images. I mean, it could be any kind of work. All I'm asking for is that it's something where it is very clear to understand what kind of design or topic or both you are interested in. So it kind of sets that in stone right at the beginning.
Okay. It should be a little intro to what you do and what you are trying to express, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you. And I see a question popping up. So Cindy asks, so she says, thank you, Professor Eva. Could you please talk more about the MF designed offers by USC? Which
Sorry,
area?
what kind of,
MF, Mass MF designed offered by USC.
I'm not sure what that means. What kind of offer
Um,
are we talking about?
Matt, yeah, maybe Cindy, you want to explain a little bit on your question?
Yeah, is the question about what the MFA program offers? Is that the question? Like, what is the MFA program at Roski? What kinds of program is it? Or are we talking about financial offers, or I'm not sure what the question is. Like scholarships or things like that, or what are we talking about?
Which area is the major focus? Maybe we can talk about the focused areas of MFA.
Okay,
Or the master, okay, she says the master major of design of
okay. What is
which
it?
areas does it include? Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the MFA in design is a 56 unit program that has, it runs about two years and a summer, one summer in there. And during that program, you take some core classes, which are all students are required to take, whether they're first year or second year students. And those are classes that are, one is called Visiting Designer class, and it's offered in the fall. And during that class, it's basically a lecture class where designers from all over the world of all different kinds and strengths and in different points in their careers are invited to come speak. And so they give us a presentation of some sort about their work and their practice. And then students, they usually come back one more time. And then on the second visit, the students work with that designer. So maybe the designer gives a prompt and you create a project based on that prompt, or there's a follow-up conversation of some sort. So it's, so that's kind of a base for the idea is to expose students to all the things they could be and make connections and network with many people. The designer in residence class, which is offered in the spring, every spring and is required, is a similar idea, except this time only 3 designers come usually, sometimes 2, sometimes usually 3. And they stay for a month each. So they could work on the premises, or students have access to them, or they make multiple appearances during 3 weeks. So it's a stronger interaction where a student actually has time to do a more in-depth idea and work with that person. So it's again a chance to meet people and make connection. The important outcomes of both of those classes are that you can view your own practice, your own work, the work that you are making through other people's eyes. So you're getting feedback from, it's a conversation. You're seeing how the different designers view your work and also suggestions they might make for you. So it's a nice opportunity. Another class that is required every semester is individual study, which is pretty much just what it sounds like. You sign up with a mentor and you work one-on-one with the faculty of your choice in design, developing your own ideas. So it's very much a one-on-one idea, and it starts to form the basis for your thesis and the basis for the work that you're going to do. So you take that every semester. That is required. You take a class called it's essentially, I can't remember what it's called. It's a design history class. So it's I think it's called Contemporary Issues in Design, and it's about current topics that people are talking about. And then it's half studio class. So again, you do projects that are based on different things. So for example, maybe you're given there's a conversation and some readings about gender and fashion. And then you go off and you work with those two ideas based on your readings or how you form your opinion or your response to something like that. So there's that. You are also able to take a class called Pedagogy, which is a elective class, but it's class where you, let's say you want to be a teacher, you want to be an educator of some sort, or you just want to learn about how people learn or understand things. So it's a class that teaches you how to teach and how to be a good student. And it's a really good class because I think learning how to listen or watching other people present or on various topics, really, you can learn a lot from that, and also working with people. We have a class called CoLab, which is a collaboration between the class and an outside entity that presents a problem. That could be different every semester. So sometimes we work on the topics of sustainability with various companies. Sometimes we work, I can give you last year we worked with a wolf rescue, and the whole class went to the forest to spend a day with wolves, which was, and then we made a film and we made all kinds of projects, and basically the discussion is about saving animals that are becoming extinct or inbred or whatever. So it was really an interesting topic. And then other semesters we've worked on worked with the Fisher Museum, which is an art museum, to create identity. So the projects can go in many different directions, and they're always different. We've also have something called directed study, which is let's say you are very interested in a topic, but you don't see a class in that topic at Roski, but it's really something you want to know more about as a designer. For example, you're interested in 3D printing and you've already mastered it, and you see we have a bunch of 3D printers, but you are now an expert and you're as smart as the teacher. So you want to learn more and investigate. So you can write your own syllabus, identify a faculty, and work with that person. So the whole course of study, I'm not going to go through all the classes, but basically the idea is that as you develop who you are as a designer, you identify people in the program you want to work with, and you design your own program with the help of these speakers, the help of the faculty, and you can switch around or you can stay with the same people. So it's a very open, very free program, and you can take classes at other parts of the university and get really smart or technically become a whiz. So
Thank you so much.
that long answer.
Very detailed and very fascinating. It actually attracts me to, want to know more about all the field work and all the connections that the program might provide. Thank you. And someone says, Shen says, thank you for sharing, Eva, Professor Eva. May I ask how much does the AP exam score affect the application for undergraduate study?
The
admission.
Yeah. I know I can tell you something because I haven't been as involved with that lately, and there's a lot of conversation about that. So I kind of don't want to speak out of turn a little bit because it's a big conversation in our school. But I can tell you that to get into the graduate school, grade point average really counts. It counts because our students are really, USC students are really smart, as I'm sure everybody on this Zoom is, and it's very competitive, and many people make good work. It's not, it's all different. So when one of the filters of that we go through is making sure that we're getting somebody that has already a proven track record of being a good student. You don't have to be the best student, but you have to show that in your undergraduate studies, it's reflected in your GPA somehow. And things like language are less important than GPA. So language is something, and I know that's a big concern for many people. Obviously, what I've seen is students that we've accepted that have not great language, but really high GPA, great portfolio. The language comes during the course of study. It might be a little harder to communicate on the first semester, and the second semester gets a little easier. And I've noticed that most people, it's sort of like when you go to any country, right? You get better as you talk more and you participate more. So the language comes. What we can't do is fix your brain for you. So you have to be smart when you come in. We can, develop that, but we can't make that happen. So you have to show a commitment, and you have to show, that you've done well prior. So.
Got it. Fair enough. So GPA counts a fair amount towards the application to undergrad and graduate.
We have many people applying. It is a competitive program to get into. We don't have a giant acceptance rate because USC won't let us. And it's interesting, when I visited other schools, and I just recently visited a few universities on the West Coast here. Many universities will take everybody. They don't necessarily even ask for portfolios sometimes. But the downside of something like that is that you can get into one of these programs, and because they've taken so many people, you will not get the kind of personalized attention or accessibility because there are too many people wanting the same thing as declared majors or minors. And so you may not be able to take a studio class that you really want till your last year. And that's a real problem for designers, because you need to be making and really involved in all that stuff all the time. So that's the difference between a program like USC and almost every other program I visited, is that there's a conscious, the people that get in, there's a conscious growth and commitment all around. It's not sort of just the degree means something. right? It really means something. So I think it's for those reasons, I believe that USC has one of the best programs I've seen, and for the freedom that you have in deciding what it is you want, why you're, again, why you're there. So yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And someone says, thank you, Professor. I'm not a design undergraduate major, but I like art design. Do I have the chance to apply? And Cindy echoes to this.
Yeah. So yes, some of our design MFAs were not designers coming in. So we have people from, I have one person that was a horticulturalist. I have one person that studied some psychology and a little bit of medicine. Another person that, I have some people that are hardcore designers. I also have people that were art majors that found that their, that what they were making did not transfer into the world, and are thinking about ways of taking their work and using it in design. So I would say apply. It's we're looking for commitment, not always, strength of concept, strength of direction, not necessarily. I mean, if you're an oil painter and you want to come in and do oil paint, then we're the wrong program. Right? It's a design program. It's the highest degree you can get as a designer. It's there is no PhD in design, right? So when you get this degree, you are essentially saying you are a master of design, and you know the most of anyone of your particular topic. So if you are an oil painter or, a brush painter or something of that nature, you're probably in the wrong program. You should be applying to MFA in art, not in design. But if you are somebody that kind of has a foot in a couple different directions and has some not necessarily even computer skills, but some way of thinking about, contemporary interaction or communication, I think we'd be interested in seeing you. I mean, again, it's the idea is to create a cohort that that's not all same, because when you leave USC, you will all go into different industries and different places. And it's the idea is that through these conversations and through this cohort, you also learn and you figure out where you belong in the world, not only geographically, but in terms of industry or the kind of thinker that you are. So, yeah.
Thank you. And we've received some questions from other live stream platforms as well. So I'll switch to the other platform a little bit and go back to Zoom. So someone asks, is portfolio more important for students' application or the grade?
Both. I mean, it's if you have low GPA and you have an incredible portfolio, that may not be enough.
Okay.
And it may not be enough. When we look at portfolios, we first look at just what the portfolio looks like. And then let's say you wind up with, I don't know, 75 people who have great portfolios, but you can only take 15 or 20, right? So then you have to set a secondary bar, which is, well, how many of those people have already some proven success with their undergraduate work? And that's your GPA. How many of those people have letters of recommendation that, really where people really are behind them. And it means something. So these are all ways, I mean, it all works together. It's not one thing, but you have to, when I say it's a competitive program, I'm not discouraging anybody from applying because everybody has a good chance. But it does mean that you have to show some track record of commitment and that you worked hard. If it didn't happen in your undergraduate, if you have one bad class, because we look at all the records, so if you have one bad class or two classes, everybody's had that in their history where they took something and it was just like, what am I doing in this class? Or this was awful, or I hated the teacher, or whatever. So that happens. But if you have many of those classes, that's a red flag for us. So one or two you forgive, but a history of that, it's hard to believe somebody will change so completely when they come into grad, which is much higher stakes if they didn't produce in their undergrad.
Thank you. And someone says, hi, Professor Eva, would you please share a bit about what areas about the current students are working on in the program, such as drawing, graphic design, or anything?
We have a few actually this semester we have few graphic designers, but we have them. There's quite a few people working with VR or trying to learn how to go into the metaverse in various ways. We have a few UX UI designers. We have a lot of people working with illustration, but illustration and motion, or illustration alongside something else. We have, yeah, animators. So, again, you can, it's thinking about where design goes, and I think, a long time ago, I used to actually discourage even illustrators because the only outlet was editorial work, which was dying for many people.
Oh.
But now illustration, image making, and motion, again, moving image in particular, or VR and illustration, or, all of these things, icon making, all of these things have become very important again. And environmental design, all these different kinds of things. So, it's back.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And I want to echo to what you just mentioned and ask a question concerned with that. So the portfolio also asks like video format is also suggested for portfolios submission. What does it involve? Like, is it related to what you just mentioned, the motion part or the motion format of the portfolio?
Yes. Or even if you're making, we also have photographers in the program. We also have people that are making short little films. So all of these things, or short animations or GIFs or all kinds of stuff. So I think these things, you don't have to do these things, but I think the design industry, most of design industry uses some form of motion. And I think people are trying, social media, everything is trying to grab your attention. So if you can figure out how your design work might do that, you might want to showcase that. So as far as format, that's up to you. I would just say that they should not be very long. I mean, a lot of people have sent documentations of performative work. So that's possible. Or if you have had a show of some sort, you can do a video, a walkthrough sometimes, so somebody gets a sense of scale or how the work, right, experience it. I think these are all good things.
Got it. Thank you. And let's move back to Zoom. We've got 3 questions left. So someone says, hi, Eva, Professor Eva, I have a question about portfolio. If I want to apply for a graduate program that's not directly related to okay, that's the question we answered. When I worked on my portfolio, should I focus more on my strength or my attempt and exploration close to my graduate direction? Or I think she wants to ask what's the highlights that I can include in my portfolio if I'm not this undergrad major.
Um, I think if you don't have the work, then showing direction is the next best thing, and interest again in something is important. I think it's really important, if you know you don't have the work, is to do a personal project that goes into your portfolio. So if you identify what you think you are missing, then don't wait for a professor to assign that to you. Create it yourself, to show direction, to show interest. I think that's really important in any portfolio, is self-driven work as opposed to assigned work. Because one of the other things I saw this year in particular was people that applied from the same schools and showed the same assignments. So then I wind up comparing 4 or 5 people using the same template to show the same assignment from the same school. And then you have a situation where, trying to decide, is one better than the other? You're comparing in an odd kind of way at that point. So I think the more work you can make that is self-driven on, again, your own templates or your own format, or not giant class collaborations, that things that show your own direction, I think that helps you in these situations.
Self-motivated.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And John says, dear professor, I'm interested in different aspects of design. I like photography, and I also like fashion design and interior design. Well, lots of interests. I am not sure which aspects of portfolio I should focus on when sending my application.
I would just say start with the piece that you think is the best made. So if you are a photographer, right, think about if there's a relationship within the kind of photo work you're doing. Or if you are really interested in fashion and you've done some design work with fashion, maybe do some photography work that supports fashion as an idea. Maybe think of fashion in a different way through a different medium, right? So that's what I would do. I wouldn't show everything. I would try to find a project that combines some of your interests or shows 2 parts of how you can work, because it's good to have all these interests. And it's, sometimes you don't know what field you're going to wind up in, but I think most everybody knows which work is the work that, looks the most solid, or where I think, I'm assuming that everybody that's a designer or an artist knows when they've succeeded or they failed if they're applying to a design program. So I would just say, pick the project that you are confident about. And then you can show, like I said, in the middle of your portfolio, you can show something that's surprising or a little different, long as at the end you sort of tie it all back together somehow.
Make it finished. Make sure to make it finished for the last project, and put your strongest as the first project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And John says, thank you, professor.
My pleasure.
And Our last question from Cindy. So the GPA requirement is 3.0. That's very specific.
Yes.
No doubt.
You really have to have a 3 or above, probably.
Okay, thank you. And that wraps up our Q&A session. So at the end, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing all of your work, and I wish you all the best of luck. And I don't in any way mean to be discouraging. I mean to be encouraging. It's just when a program is competitive, it doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. Every artist and every designer feels they're not good enough for some reason. And it's not true. You're all good enough. And you should never think that somehow, you don't have what it takes. I encourage everybody to make the effort. And also, again, if you don't have the work that you think I described, then do some of that work. There's nobody stopping you from making some of that work on your own. And again, that goes a long way, showing initiative, showing a passion about something super important.
Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.